Hi, I'm Neil Anthus, owner of Sound Financial Partners. We're a full-service financial planning practice dedicated to optimizing your investment, tax, and cash flow strategies. As fiduciaries, we always keep our advisory clients' best interests in mind when making recommendations. Whether you're preparing for retirement or growing your business, we're here to help you achieve your financial goals. Ready to start your journey to financial success? Visit us at our Wesley office or give us a call at 401-642-4333.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Curtain with the Granite Theater. My name is Ben Barber, and I am joined today, as always, by the artistic director of the Granite Theater, Nicole DiMattei, and Steve Spartano.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Steve.
How are you?
Good. Steve, you're the first guest that we've had on this show whose name I have not had to ask before the show because now, well, okay, that's not true. It's Sandra Laub. I didn't need to ask, obviously, but yes. Anyway, hello.
Hello. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back.
Thanks.
Before we get into the business of the day, we're saying goodbye to the allergist wife.
I am so sad. It was a beautiful show. I mean, a great turnout, which was so wonderful. You know, nearly full houses for every show, which is all I can ask for, especially with a show that was mostly unknown. So I think we did a really good job in all the decisions we made regarding the show. And it was beautiful. You know, obviously I was with the rehearsal process because I directed it. I saw opening night and then I went back for closing night, which is generally what I do. I like to see, you know, I very much tell casts that the show is locked, but obviously it's theater, right? It ebbs and flows and energy is different every night. And that's what I love about live theater. Oh, there I am singing again. And it was just so great.
Get the singing out now before we transition to what we're talking about.
To what we're actually talking about. Though there's singing.
Okay,
there's singing.
Fair.
Just not my like chippy musical theater singing. But just to see like how they settled in the characters and still keeping with the, you know, arc of the show and nothing in that sense changed. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, but they were grounded and like their characters were just so much more in their bodies yesterday. And it was beautiful to watch. And you know, it was the same show as opening night. Like they were ready opening night and it was fantastic. But also different. And that's what I love. That's what I love about theater. So it was a wonderful run and I cannot believe that we are already finished the second show of our season. Right?
It's crazy. 5 more to go.
Ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Well, technically 6 because of Peter Pan.
Right.
And then technically 7 because we're doing 101 Dalmatians. I'm going to consider that a show.
And then technically 8 because I'm going to throw one in later. Just cause. Just cause. Full scale musical too.
Oh, great.
Full scale musical.
You better talk to me soon.
It is moving along so quickly. The fact
Right?
that, like you just said, you just had auditions for Kiss Me Kate, which is the summer musical. And it's just like, you know, it's hard to even think about summer wearing 2 shirts and long pants and sweatshirts. Yeah.
But yay, today's sunny.
Yes,
I know.
It's moving right along.
Yeah, it is. It's April. Like, yeah, no, summer musical. It's here.
It is April.
How upset were you that you had to take the set down?
I was so upset. And you know what's magical about Strike? The whole set was pretty much down in an hour. And so like 4:30 hit. The show came down at like 4:28. And Strike people were already there. And like as I was saying goodbye to friends and patrons, things were already coming down. Do you know what I mean? So like I was like, it's going away. And I didn't get a proper goodbye. But no, it's amazing.
And I think I mentioned to you when I was in the theater a couple of weeks ago where the set's beautiful. You're in the audience, you're on the stage. It's like, oh, it's a beautiful set. It looks like an apartment. We could live here. But then to me, this was kind of the magical part of it, was where you go backstage and you're seeing the back of the flats. And for me, as someone who's worked construction, it was like, oh, we're doing such a nice job of the way we're building these sets and the way that we can easily take them apart, where all the C-clamps that we're using to hold the walls together.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that is like, instead of using 1,000 screws and constantly screwing into the 1x3s, we just have clamps holding it together. So how much faster does it and more efficient to undo those clamps, a couple of the screws that are tied into the structure of the building, and then boom, those flats are down.
I know.
Just like that.
Yeah, there's support. There are support beams that are screwed into, stable walls. But then the rest of the set is put up by C-clamps, and it is fascinating.
Yeah,
it is a
great.
puzzle, right? And then
it's secure.
And it's super secure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what's great is that if something is in the wrong place, it's way easier to fix with the C-clamps. But it looks really cool backstage.
It looked really cool. You felt like you were in this just a completely different space. And that to me, if I was bringing someone to the theater, that's where I'd bring them first.
Yeah.
Because that is, it's kind of like the backstage pass sort of thing.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to kind of see behind the curtain. I get, see what I did? I just did that. Oh, wow.
Yeah. There he goes.
I did not mean to do that. Nice.
Oh, yes,
Nice. Couldn't have planned it that way.
No. I need Steve on the show every week, because then I won't have to try to slip in my jokes, because he'll just naturally do it. That's the magic of theater with Steve. Wow. Also, I feel so terrible. Last week was the Guys and Dolls show, where we had all of the Guys and Dolls references.
Right. Oh, and you didn't bring that hat. Oh my God.
Well, I didn't have this hat last week.
This is a new hat?
This is a new hat.
Where'd you get it?
Toscano's Men's Shop, 9 Canal Street in downtown Westerly.
I was gonna
I put this hat on as a joke, and Ken Collins made me leave with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great on you.
So
it's nice.
So
yay,
I
Toscano's.
have the horse right here. His name is Paul Revere.
Yeah,
I'm ready for the Kentucky Derby in 1945.
I had a dream actually the other night so we're doing Kiss Me Kate, right? But I guess it must have been Saturday night. I had a dream that we were doing Guys and Dolls again, and I was like, it's okay, it's been 2 years and I can do it better now. Because Guys and Dolls, one of my absolutely favorite musicals, was just my first year here, and I'm still gathering, you know what I mean? Still figuring out. It was very much a transition year, and it was a wonderful show. I'm not saying but in my dream I could have done it better.
Isn't that how we always think, though?
Yeah.
Down the road.
Oh my gosh.
When it's all said and done, what could I could have, this monologue, I would have liked to have done it that way.
Well, it's even.
But then it's like a trickle down effect. Or it's like it affects something else, or domino effect.
Well, so this is so silly, but at the in Tale of the Allergist's Wife, during rehearsals, during tech, once costumes went on, we were playing with these aprons, and Marjorie always wore one apron and Lee wore another. And I kept in rehearsal being like, should Marjorie wear Lee's apron at the end? Should she? Because she was the sous chef, and at the end she becomes the chef. And I was like, does that apron mean something? And I was like, it's okay, because her keeping her apron means that she had always had the confidence in herself. She was always meant to be the head chef. And then even yesterday I was like, should I have switched the aprons? Right. And I still don't know the right answer. And I know no one cares.
Well, someone might notice and be like, oh, she put on the wrong apron.
Well, yeah.
That's what I would think, but a lot of times, we're doing things like that, for us.
Right. It is.
And is that right or wrong? Does it, a friend of mine says, does it serve the script? Things like that. But, there are times where maybe it is nice to play around like that, make people think.
I don't think that there's a single show that I've ever done that I don't want to do again and better.
Right. That is That is. And that's why we lock in the shows. Do you know what I mean? Because we're gonna get to Laramie, I promise. But opening day of Allergist Wife, Sandra texted asking if she could change blocking. And I was like, no, because we're done. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I said last night. The show is locked. And it gets to this point where, especially the actors start. This is why I say we don't run things very much before an audience comes in, because the actors start forgetting the whole show and start thinking very much about themselves and their track, and then try to make choices that serve them that might not necessarily serve the whole show. But it's just this constant thing. Like everyone will do it. Everyone will be like, oh, I wish I would have done this, but I can't because the show is locked, right? Whereas the director might think the same thing, but they're looking at it very differently. But yeah, shows are always great. They're just great.
And especially blocking, so much muscle memory.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, you're used to walking here and you're saying that word, or you're moving here, or someone else is moving, which is like it could be, a visual cue for you. Oh, they crossed there. Now I'm going to cross over here, say this, there's just, it is a dance.
It is a dance. Yeah.
And as we move into Laramie with the dance of the chairs.
Yeah, classic Brad Delzer.
Yes.
The dance of the chairs. Yay. So we're here to talk about Laramie, the Laramie project, which opens in 2.5 weeks.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Because that's what we do at the Granite Theater.
Yes. Well, you go from we all do this. We have all the time in the world. We've got 7-8 weeks. Oh, that's months away. It feels like months away. And then all of a sudden it's 3 weeks. And it's like, oh, okay, here we go. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
But it always seems to come together.
It always.
And this one will too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. As I told you before, we're excited to get on the stage and start working that space, with a full cast and moving around and feeling that space out, which will be nice. I mean, we've been lucky. We've been able to work in open spaces at Central Baptist and over at the aquarium, which has been really cool. And there's been chairs, because we have a lot of chairs per usual for a Brad show. And so it'll be nice to be in the theater tonight for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we don't have another space, right? So generally the show that's up next rehearses in the theater, and the show that's up after that rehearses down in the lobby. And so if they have rehearsals on the same day, there's something for both of them. The problem is if the next show wants to rehearse on a day that there is a show, or the problem with the Allergist Wife is the set took up the whole space. And so, I mean, same with Full Monty. So the Allergist Wife, I kept them rehearsing downstairs because we understood that space, and it didn't make sense for us to move upstairs with all of the Full Monty set on stage. And so the same with Laramie, they have not been rehearsing on the stage because the Allergist Wife set just took up the whole stage. And so finally tonight they can venture upstairs.
Have the stage to ourselves. Yeah. And the downstairs space, just with the lolly columns and not
fancy.
Having all the chairs.
Lolly columns?
That's what they're called.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
The things in your basement.
You teach me.
Lolly columns.
Yeah, lolly columns. Yeah. You got to say it like that too.
Lolly columns. I'm going to teach Taya that. She'll love it.
Yeah. So it wouldn't have worked. We needed the chairs. We've got a cast of 14 people. We're moving around, shifting around. Just the idea of open space just works much better. So we're going to transition quite nicely into the stage tonight. I think, it'd be good.
How many performances will there be for Laramie?
6.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. And I will, Laramie's already selling pretty well. So with, 2.5 weeks, get your tickets. It's
GraniteTheater.org.
Thank you. Granite Theater with an RE.org, or call the box office 401-596-2341. So we're doing 6 performances of the Laramie project. And then in June, we are doing a staged reading of the Laramie project 10 years later. We're doing that at the United, and with the Chorus of Westerly singing a few numbers from Considering Matthew Shepard. Yeah. It's going to be a really cool event. June 6th. Tickets should go on sale very shortly. I think I'm near positive we're locked in on June 6th, but it could be June 7th.
There's been some back and forth on
Yeah.
that. So,
But keep your eyes out because that'll and see Laramie Project first.
Yeah.
Because
Well, that would make sense.
that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely see
is-
Laramie Project first.
going to be a powerful show.
Yeah.
So, Steve, why don't you tell us about the Laramie Project? Because a
Sure.
lot of people do not know.
Do not know. Okay.
I'm just gonna sit back now.
So, October of 1998, Matthew Shepard was murdered. He was. I'll try to fill in some gaps and still tell the story. Matthew Shepard was at the. It was in October of 1998. Matthew Shepard was at the Fireside Bar, and there were two individuals, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, who spotted him and targeted him to rob him. They coerced him. They targeted him and coerced him into their truck, where they beat him and subsequently took him outside of town, continued to beat him, tied him to a fence, and left him there to die. And he was discovered 18 hours later. He was brought to a local hospital where he passed away 6 days later. And so what happened was the Tectonic Theater Project out of New York and Moises Kaufman went to Laramie about a month later. And over the course of a year, they did over 200 interviews. They interviewed townspeople, the police, EMTs, doctors, friends, family, things like that. And they actually interviewed, no, that was later. I apologize. That was with 10 years later. They interviewed McKinney. So they interviewed over 200 people, and they put together, how do I want to put it? They put together the voices of Laramie. Laramie is not on trial here, but what we've learned from our table work, and I just watched a video recently of Moises Kaufman, we learned about the people of the town, and we've come to understand that you may not know an individual in the script, but you know their voices. You've heard things that they've said from other people in any town, USA. At the time, so Matthew Shepard is gay, and the way they targeted him was these two guys assumed two things. They assumed that he was rich, or that he was wealthy, which he was, and they assumed that he was gay. And their move to jack him up was they were going to pretend that they were gay. And that's how they coerced him into their truck. And things went bad, and went bad for everyone. But I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So the town is not on trial here, but it's a reminder that this could be any town. The people, the voices that you hear, the things that are said, it's there's a lot there. There's a part where there's acceptance and tolerance. You'll hear people within the script say things like, I don't care what they do as long as they don't bother me. But then at the end, they'll say, but Laramie is a live and let live. So it's like, well, which one are you? Right. So, you're tolerant. You're not accepting. At the time, this is when 1998, the term hate crime was a very familiar term. At the time, 46 states had hate crime legislation. Wyoming was not one of them. More than 25 years later, there are 47 states that have a hate crime legislation. Wyoming is still not one of them. They have it within certain cities, but not the state itself. There are 3 states that do not have hate crime legislation. It is Arkansas, South Carolina, and Wyoming.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know who, at the time it was 46. I don't know who then became 47. You would have thought it would have been Wyoming, but it was not. I should have taken notes. I had a lot to say.
You brought your script.
I had a lot to say. So the Tectonic Theater Company goes there. They interview all these people, and then they put together this play. And it's, like I said, it's the voices of the town. The way that the show is done is that people play multiple characters. I play 6 different people in the show. Everything from a rancher to a car mechanic to the governor to the lead detective. One of my scenes, I interrogate Aaron McKinney, and it is all taken from actual. They've edited interviews, they've found scripts, they probably, like the governor stuff, they probably just found the video and they used that. I also play Allison Mears, who is a social worker, or social services, excuse me. And so I play a woman. I'm not dressed in drag or anything like that. I just do some subtle things. I don't want to speak too much for Brad, our director, but there are times where we'll throw gender out. And I'm just another voice. That's it. And it's a way to mix things up. And I'll do something, excuse me, with that character. We're all doing something very subtle. It might be, I mentioned the hat earlier. We might go from a baseball cap to a cowboy hat. Or in my case, I'll probably put a badge on when I'm the cop. When I play Allison, I'm going to file my nails.
Nice. I have a nail file. I know exactly where it is.
Beautiful.
We just
I'm going to
organized
file
the
my
back
nails.
closet.
And there were some people in the cast who, as I was doing it in rehearsal, I was like, like I'm sanding, a charcuterie board. They're like, this is like, Steve, you're not going to have any nails left, and then
sand in a charcuterie.
Yeah.
Yes,
that is
yes.
so Steve. I
Yeah.
know.
What a turn of phrase.
Yes.
By the way, just to interrupt for a second,
Please.
Nina said I ordered the Kleenex. And Alex and Ellis said, love to see Steve in drag.
So, the cast was like, Steve, we will teach you how to file your nails. It's not something I typically do. But there's a lot there. They talk about how he was beaten. He was pistol whipped. It's not in the script, but we did a lot of table work with this show, which was, at one point I said, this should be the show. The audience should just watch us read a chapter and talk about it. Because we have people of different ages, people of different sexual preferences, different genders, and everyone had something to say. And it was powerful. There were plenty of tears shed. There's language in this show, which is language, you shouldn't be, using out in the world, but it's here, and I think people should probably be, aware, a certain age group, you're not going to bring a 10-year-old to this show.
Right.
It's just, but it's heavy. There's some really powerful stuff. And the Westboro Baptist Church shows up at the trial, if you're familiar with them and some of their language. And
what I love about that, you're like, please,
Yeah.
let me take a breath.
Yeah.
So when last year in 2024, Brad brought this show to me. Oh, sorry. So this was in 2023 when we were discussing 2024. And I was not familiar with the show. I hadn't read it. And I was like, this is my second year, my first year that I am choosing the shows. I don't want to be preachy. I was like, I'm not ready. I don't know Westerly well enough. I don't want to be preachy. And then I was like, our town, that one, let's do that, which was, wonderful. And I'm so happy we did it. And then, I told Brad my theme for this year, 25 years. We're doing shows that were all on or off Broadway in the year 2000 when the Granite opened. And he was like, look what's on the list. And I'm sorry, I sang. I did it. And and so I was like, okay, Laramie's on this list. It was off Broadway in the year 2000. Let me read it. And I was so impressed with how not preachy it was. And talking about the Westboro Baptist Church, I was like, wow, this is literally just them talking. And you understand, even if you don't agree, you understand where they're coming from. It's not a bias, right? And that it was that moment that I was like, I can do this show. And it's so beautiful.
Well, that's in the script where they are interviewing a religious leader from Laramie, and he says, do it correct. And he's basically saying, don't put your own spin on this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't point a finger. This is, he says it multiple times, do it correctly. And they do. And I think it is a not friendly reminder, but it's a reminder that where it can happen anywhere, and not just this. It's no different than, a school shooting or, police brutality or whatever, things that you think can only happen someplace else. You weren't here. There was a shooting here. It was not a school shooting, but there was a shooting here in 2019, and it rattled the community for a little bit. It was,
wow,
it was up at Babcock Village, and it was definitely rattled the community, because that doesn't typically, it can be anywhere.
And that's what they like. That was very much the point of Laramie Project. Like, how did this happen here?
Where our town is, I loved our town. I saw it 3 times. I would have gone every night, because for me it was, this is what life is.
Our town.
You're born, you grow up, your townspeople, and then you live, you die, you love all those things. And so that was something where, especially if you're of a certain age, you could relate to our town. This has been referred to our town, but a 180, a different version of it. And there are some, you will need the Kleenex in this show, but you'll also laugh. There are some characters in this show. And you said to me, you have to be able to have some comedy within a drama, because you just it can't be overloaded like that. But there are some funny moments in this show, but there's also a lot of stuff. You should wake up the next day thinking about this. That's the hope here. And Brad has a way of, it's very minimalist, his shows. We talk about the dance of the chairs. If you saw a girl on a train, if you saw our town, it's all about chairs. And he finds these powerful moments through lights and sound, that sensory thing that happens sometimes in theater, where, the set is beautiful, but it's, the set for Allergist is beautiful under the work lights, but then you put it on the stage lights and all of a sudden it becomes something else.
Right.
So every show, as you know, is like that. So there's just, there is a lot to digest, to unpack within Laramie Project. And, it was a huge story. I was thinking about this on the way over. You were 11 years old. It might not have even been on your radar.
Oh, it was.
It was. Okay.
Yeah, I was. It's weird that you know my age.
You told me when you were born, so I remembered.
I know at the beginning of this, at the beginning of your story about what the story of Laramie Project is, I was 11. I literally just turned 11 when this happened, and it was the first time that I can remember the term hate crime and having big discussions in school about this and you know, it was a really profound. I was in 5th grade, and I was in 6th grade. I was starting 6th grade. I just started 6th grade, and I remember this like being a huge topic of conversation, and that that innocent, childlike, you know, the term or the thought process of like people are not born to hate anyone, and so it was my 11-year-old brain going, why do people hate gay people? I don't understand that. That's such a foreign concept to me. I don't understand why that would be the case, and it was, yeah, it was a big deal.
That's actually amazing because I will say I grew up in a town in the mountains in Pennsylvania where everyone was white and straight and went to one of 3 churches, and I did not hear about this.
I was going to ask you if you were aware too, because you're
Not at all.
you're not much older than
Yeah,
Ben.
no. I mean, and I don't know if it was the like just I also had 4 TV stations. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't,
Yeah.
but it's not something we talked about in school, or at least that I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, it became national news. It became worldwide news. There were, this is in the script, there were marches all over the country. You know, we just did a thing where we just reeled off all the cities where there were huge marches, and I bet there's probably 8 or 10 cities that we name across the country. You know, from California to Maine, and so yeah, it was a huge story. Definitely. And it definitely brought attention to, you know, that term hate crime. I feel like for myself, that was when it was really like drilled into my head, even though there were 46 states who had hate crime legislation. But I really feel like that's when it happened. Even a buddy of mine who I mentioned it to, that was the first thing he said. He goes, that's when we first started hearing about hate crimes, you know, but obviously it was going on before that, but it's when, you know, I became aware, others became aware. Not everyone, obviously. You know,
right.
So,
yeah,
but
I mean, it was one of the, not that these things group with each other, but like in my mind, when I think about the 90s, I think Oklahoma City bombing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oklahoma City bombing. I think I think Matthew Shepard, obviously then Columbine, and what was the other?
Waco.
Waco wasn't a big deal. That didn't like.
You were very young then.
Yeah, that didn't register
to
me.
Yeah.
Obviously, like the Rodney King stuff was in the early 90s. That didn't.
Yep.
I was 3
Yeah.
years old.
Yep.
Heaven's Gate was another one. Like those are like the big.
Ooh, I still don't know what's
stories.
Heaven's Gate. I actually don't know that one.
The cult that was in '97. The cult that
Right.
mass suicide.
The Nikes.
With Nikes.
Yeah.
Drinking Kool-Aid and.
Oh, I thought that was Waco. That wasn't.
No.
Was that a cult? Oh gosh. See, this is my sheltered life.
I think in '97 the Haley Bob comet was.
Yeah,
passing.
I remember that.
Right.
And this
That's what he's talking about.
This group thought that there were aliens and God that were trailing the tail of the comet and in a UFO, and that they would go to heaven by killing themselves. So they all wore Nikes. They all wore like the same thing. They all put like blankets over themselves and drank poison and committed like a mass suicide. Wow! You did not know anything about this?
No, I definitely saw the comet though.
Yeah.
Seriously, sheltered.
So, but that Oklahoma City OJ and Matthew Shepard, like those are like the 6 defining things of the 90s for me as a kid, other than like Michael Jordan. like good stuff. But those were the terrible things.
He's not.
He's not playing basketball anymore, guys. I learned this recently.
An episode about a month ago, she mentioned that is Michael Jordan still playing basketball?
Also, the amount of times that I called that song in Monty Michael Jackson's ball. I sing and dance.
Sports and pop music.
Yeah, don't know either of those. Oh, it's funny. Anyway, we're talking about the comet, and not the Great Comet of 1812, the musical. Anyway, Laramie. Wow, that's so interesting. And it is really interesting to me because also, a friend of mine yesterday asked me to remind her what Laramie Project was about. She's a little younger than me, so like the same thing. It wasn't like a giant thing on her radar, though. She grew up in Long Island, so I think she was just too young.
And another stat that I'll throw out here is that I looked up. There are over 2,000 hate crimes towards gay people every year that are reported, that are just reported.
Right.
So the stuff still happens.
Yeah. And it's going up, unfortunately, just because it's now allowed or not allowed, but you know what I mean? Like
there are some people who feel like they can say or do what they like without any consequences.
Right.
And, for myself personally, without revealing any, names, I was with someone recently who we were driving through some rural country. And this is not to also point a finger at rural America. Once again, it can happen here. But we were in a rural country and there was some political signage, and the person I was with is gay, and he kind of said something just off to the side. He's just like, "Oh, I hope we don't break down." And I was like, "What are you worried about?" And he's just like, he goes, "I really don't want to break down up here, and he made a reference about his sexuality. And I was like, I never thought like that. And I've said this to a lot of people, like, I've been strolling around for 50 something years and I haven't had to walk around in fear. And I'll say the line, I have a line in the show where I say, where the detective starts to find out what the underlying fears of the gay community were. And that's where it finally hits home for him. And he says, this is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And you would think that, you would hope that, but it's a real thing. And I've never had to walk around like that.
Right.
I've never, you as a woman,
I was just going to say, like,
you've had to walk around like that. If you were walking here, even in downtown Westerly, if you were walking from the train station to the theater at 11 o'clock at night by yourself, you'd make sure that if there was someone behind you, you'd maybe walk a little faster or,
and I did shows in New York City. Absolutely. I got home late. Like it's really interesting to have an underlying fear of 50% of the population. Do you know? And then it doesn't even compare to, this, the queer community, because that just brings a different kind of hate. It's right. So interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting. And as so Steve, as two big, strong, straight white men, we are we have nothing, there's the way that we walk through life is different.
It is.
And it's a lot. Not that there isn't, because this is the thing, right? Where you say that and then people are like, oh, everyone has problems and yes, absolutely we do. But we don't have the fear of, am I going to be safe walking to my car at the end of the night?
Right.
Am I going to be safe just going to a restaurant by myself? You know what I mean? Those are and it gets worse, and it's not just something that happens other places.
Right.
It's something that happens everywhere. Like you said, right? Like New York City, someplace where you would expect for a young woman to be a little bit fearful, getting home late at night and maybe taking the subway by herself or walking a few blocks by herself. Like that's a scary situation. Sometimes even getting a new cab, right? Like you don't know what's going to happen. Uber, the scary. You never know what that situation's going to be. And then, but it's the same, like thankfully that I know of, there were no hate crimes of this nature around this time here. Like where, I went to school at Cherahoe, and as you did too, right? Yeah, I saw a basketball game of you from the 80s a couple weeks ago. Anyway.
Wow.
I'll send it to you.
I love this.
Anyway,
I will have no idea what's going on.
Lots of hair and short shorts.
So, but like, I remember, okay, so I have a friend from high school who, like, I remember when he was in the early 2000s, when he was like the only out kid in the school. And he was bullied, like, and he had it, I think he would say, pretty well comparatively to other people, right? But like he was just being himself and doing it and being authentically him, or as authentic him as he could be. And I remember people saying nasty things
Absolutely.
to him, about him privately, like et cetera, and it was just him. And this was 3 years later, 3 years after the Matthew Shepard incident that this was happening. And then his singular courage, and I'm not saying that he was the first out gay kid ever at Cherahoe. I doubt that, but his singular courage allowed other people to have their own courage and to do that. And he was one of the founding members of the Gay Straight Alliance. And more kids came out, and more people felt authentic about that. And I shared a story with him about when I was directing things at Westerly High School. I went to a talent show 15 years ago, maybe, and this girl stood up during the talent show, and she read a poem, and she came out during the talent show, and that crowd was filled with jocks, goth kids, band kids, everybody. Standing ovation for her bravery. And like 15 years before that, in the early 2000s, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And 3 years before that, we had the Matthew Shepard incident. And like, it's just, I'm really glad to see the progression of where we are. I know it's not fully there, and I know that there's a lot of things wrong with that and whatever, but and I say that because he messaged me, my friend messaged me and a bunch of other people on Facebook a couple weeks ago, talking about going to a school committee meeting and talking about something. And I was like, and asking like if people could, share this and whatever, or comment support or whatever. And I was like, I do nothing political. I say nothing political. 321 has absolutely no political anything on it. And there's a reason for that. I don't think that this is the place for it. I think, people want to come and and you know, especially like I want people to enjoy the kids' sports games and the businesses and promote everything. And there are other places that handle that stuff,
Mhm.
you know, and do it better than I'm not a journalist. I don't want to be a journalist. I don't want to talk politics. But that staying neutral on everything made me hesitate commenting support for his thing. And I was like, who am I in the Jean Valjean sense?
Right, yeah.
Who am I if I'm not gonna say like I love this dude? Who am I if I'm not gonna say like, no, that's I'm gonna swear, I'm sorry. It's my show. It's my channel. I'm gonna swear. Who am I if I'm not gonna go, that's fucking wrong. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna stand up for that. I'm gonna like these, you know, bullying is wrong, hate crimes are wrong, hating anybody for who they are is messed up. And so, but like that doubt that I had about doing that was so shameful for me. And I texted my best friend and I sent him a screenshot and I was like, I hate that I wrote a reply to this and then deleted it and then wrote it again and then deleted it. And he was like, he just gave me what for, like about it back, and was basically like, who are you if you just, you can't do
Yeah.
that? And he said, sorry, by the way, I didn't mean to yell at you. And I was like, no, I sent it to you so that you would, because I needed that. So anyway.
But we need to hear, you're not going to have that sort of empathy if you are sheltered, you know, and sometimes it's not your fault. I've gone through this with a couple of things recently. You know, if you are, I always used to say, you know, every guy I know is just like me, you know, a white working stiff, you know, and that's kind of all in we talk sports and weather and fishing, you know what I mean? Like, that's it. But if you are involved in theater, you spend more time with women and men of different ages, gay people, straight people, and you start to get experience, people of color, you know, religions, you know, I didn't know any Jewish people until I got into theater. I barely knew any gay people until I got into theater. You know, we live in a community here, it's 91% white. So if you don't know, you know, a lot of people of color, that might be kind of not your fault. You're a product of your geography. But when you can, you know, meet gay people, meet people of color, and you listen to their stories, their experiences, like I did on that drive, I never had to think like that. And this person they've had to go through their life like that. Speaking with women, I understand now. Now that's something I understood anyway. We were, I won't get into viewpoints, but we were doing a drill with Brad does this thing called viewpoints. And we were walking around the space. What's that? Okay, there you go. Yeah, I've kind of learned to like it too. Don't tell Brad. You know, so, but we were doing this thing where you're walking around and, you know, they says, you know, follow somebody. And when I would follow someone, it was hard for me, especially if it was a woman, to be right on their tail. Because out on the street, I never walk right behind it. Now, if you're in New York City, that's different. You kind of have to. But I am very aware of not being right behind a woman. I'll offset myself so they pick me up in their periphery. You know, I might even say something so they know that I'm there because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. You know, big guy, you know, but like, I mean, they don't know. They don't know that I'm a teddy bear.
I know.
You know, you know, so, but you were right about earlier, like being a big guy. You know, if you're walking down the street, you know, they don't know if you're a tough guy or not. They just see a big guy, and they're not gonna bother me. You know, for the most part. Though I got bullied. in school.
Everyone
I
gets
did,
bullied.
because there's that Neanderthal thing that I talk about, where it's the little guy wants to bully the big guy because he wants to see if he can take him down. So bullying happens really for everyone. But yeah, obviously with what we're talking about, if you don't know other people's stories, it's hard to to understand. And there are things to be learned from other people and their experiences, instead of just having this tunnel vision. And I could go chapter and verse with the things that are said in this script, where I'm just like, yep, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. And as I said, the table work that we did, because we've got all different sorts of people in this show, and having people talk about stories and shed tears. And though Brad said one time, it's therapeutic to do that work, it's not therapy. There were two, but it was therapeutic. And I was able to voice some frustrations of my own. And it's not to make a comparison, but it's one thing, just like sometimes just being nice, or using words like, I've used the word sweet. Oh, that was really sweet of them to do. And I've had guys be like, really, Steve, sweet? Like, I'm like, what is your problem, dude?
Right.
Like, come on, just
you need a hug.
You need a hug. There's some challenging things for everyone.
For everyone.
Yes.
But again, like, that's what I love about this show, because you hear 200 voices like that, and you really just get a sense of people and why they make the decisions they made. Hindsight's 2020, but you don't know what you're going to do in that situation, and we're experiencing that in right now, right? There's a show called It Can't Happen Here. Do you know, are you familiar with it? And that's like this, because as much as we could say, well, that would never happen here, and if it did, I would do this, you do not know until you are in it, and the people that you love are in it and making choices, and their choices are going to affect what you do. You trying to protect people are gonna, right? And I think I think this show is just so powerful for people to see, because I don't want to say there is no right or wrong, but it's just about understanding, and you watching someone make the decision that they make, number one, could help you feel better about decisions you've made in the past. Like, I'm not the only one who feels guilty about things they've done in the past, but it also makes you think twice the next time a decision like that comes across your lap. So, yeah.
It's a lot. And like I said, I know I've been all over the map on this today, but it's just there, because there is so much in there. I can't tell you how many times, even during rehearsal, where we're sitting in our chairs, like there's the fireside bar scene. So, I'm like sitting in a booth, and, we're always reading our own lines. You're not necessarily reading the whole script all the time, but you're hearing someone else's lines. And all of a sudden I'm doing that. And I said to James, I was like, did you hear what they just said? And we pick up on that all the time, where we hear something else, which is so contradictory. And James and I were talking about it, where there's so much in the script, you're not going to leave there and remember it all. But it's kind of one of those things where if everybody leaves there with one thing, that's enough. One thing to think about, one thing to sleep on, one thing to tell a friend about, and have a conversation. Or like I said, if you should wake up the next day and be like, wow, that's really, whatever. It was scary. It was frightening. It was amazing. It was food for thought, so there's a lot of verbiage in here that's, it's loaded. I don't know. It should be wonderful. It should be wonderful, powerful,
Powerful.
everything. Yeah. And important.
Yes.
It's important.
That's what we got.
Yeah.
I love it. I have I usually slip in some sort of a reference to a musical theater song at some point, and I have one, but I don't think it's appropriate, so I'm not going to do it. I will tell you guys off there.
Ben, can we talk about the Red Sox defense?
No.
Because this is my show, and I don't know what that means.
I did that for her.
This week, 8 a.m. You can come and talk to Ken Collins. But thank you guys so much. Laramie Project opens next week.
No. May
Oh,
2nd.
please.
May 2nd. Okay.
Yeah, we have some time.
We just got off book.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, 2.5 weeks.
But this Wednesday we are having an open rehearsal. So this Wednesday, and you can buy tickets on our website. They're only $10. So under the Laramie Project page, there's a link to the backstage pass open rehearsal, and so you can come Wednesday at 7 and see a bit of the show. And it's a working rehearsal, so the audience gets to see the director work with the cast. No lights, no costumes, no sounds on stage.
What time is this at?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
And then there's a talk back with the audience, with the cast and the production team. So if you have no idea what the show is about and are interested in learning more, or just interested in learning more about what happens during the rehearsal process, because it is really interesting. I had a patron for Allergist's Wife email me later and say, I might like the backstage pass more than the finished product. Then she told me after the finished product that it was amazing. She loved it. But just that reaction is exactly, she loved learning. And even though she was at the Full Monty one, she was at the Allergist's Wife, she learned different things, and that's what we try to do, because
Guys,
yes.
Can I just tell you something? I turned my mic down at one point while Steve was talking earlier, and I noticed that it was picking it up, and I turned my mic all the way down, and I don't think I ever turned my mic back up until just now. I'm wondering if that entire time that I gave my little story about my friend, I think that my mic was down the whole time.
Wow.
My apologies. Now you guys get to see me in a funny hat.
Well, hopefully it got picked up on one of the.
I'm sure it was fine enough. Hold on, let me do this. Ready? Hey guys, so yeah, okay. Something's happening over there. Anyway, Clarkson didn't mention it at all, and he's been watching and commenting the entire time. So, so I went on a full monologue, and none of you mentioned it. So, guess that's fine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Ken Collins for my fedora cowboy hat. That I have to it messed up my hair. So, and my hair is like an inch, not even an inch tall. So I can't believe that I have a hat hair with a buzz cut, but apparently I do. So now I have to wear this for the rest of the day.
But it looks great.
Oh, stop it. Thank you.
Should.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get your tickets right now for the Laramie Project opening May 2nd.
May 2nd. But the backstage pass is this Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye for now. Experience local excellence with Roof Right Roofing in Charlestown, Rhode Island. With over 40 years of unmatched expertise, Roof Right specializes in architectural shingles and holds the prestigious title of GAF Master Elite Installers. Known for their commitment to the community and support for local initiatives, Roof Right is your trusted partner for all of your home's roofing needs. Call today for a free estimate at 401-212-4140.
Hi, this is Dan from Lathrop Insurance. In this challenging insurance environment, Lathrop Insurance can be your beacon in the storm to help you find the coverage you need at the right price. Now, more than ever, you need a partner in the insurance industry that can work with multiple carriers to make sure you have the right coverage at the right price. Lathrop Insurance carries home, auto, and business insurance and can be reached at 401-596-2525. We've been supporting the local community since 1939, and we look forward to working with you.
What's going on, everybody? It's Patrick down here at the Wireless Zone at Dunn's Corners at 224 Post Road, and everybody down here is getting the brand new iPhone 16. We have it here in stock. The best part is right now, if you trade in your old phone, you get it for free. We got deals all weekend, awesome savings. Come on down and see us, 224 Post Road, Dunn's Corners, Verizon Wireless Zone. We'll see you soon.
D&V Mechanical specializes in the installation, maintenance, and servicing of Mitsubishi ductless mini-split heat pump systems. We are certified by Mitsubishi as Diamond Elite Contractors and factory trained and up to date on the proper procedure of the installation and service of Mitsubishi ductless heating and air conditioning ductless heat pumps. We assist with the paperwork to reduce much of the stress-related documentation required to get the state rebates and federal tax incentives. We are not a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-nothing company. We are masters of ductless heat pumps. It's what we do, and it's what we know.